Alright, so here's where I'm confused. So this gauge should be lighting up. The wiring harness goes into the bottom left connector down here. So it's 12 volt. So I've got my voltmeter set for 20 volts. So it should be measuring. So this should be lighting up right now. So if I put the red lead on the red wire, and then black is, where's our black one? Where's our black lead, Zachary? Oh, this is touching the frame, so it's on ground. All right, so we should be getting, when we touch red, we should be getting close to 12 volts, which we are, so we're getting power. It's grounded, we're getting power, and then this is connected to something that's putting off like very low power, which I think is just for illumination. But it is not lighting up, and I've tried 3 different gauges. Got these 2 other gauges here that are not lighting up under the same configuration. So I can't figure out why I would be getting power here. It would be going down to this bottom left slot, which is, according to the wiring diagram, bottom left slot is where the power wiring harness should come in. Red is the 12 volt constant fused power, and black is ground. The other 2 are accessory and dimmer switch stuff. So I've got it connected, but it doesn't seem important. Unless there's something with the accessory I need to connect on the ignition switch. I think I've got this figured out. I mistakenly connected 2 grounds, and that started to fry the dimmer switch. That started smoking, but it's doing fine now, so don't do that. So the connections are black goes to green with the white stripe. The red and white go together on the black with white stripe. And I've got orange on the black with white stripe. That doesn't seem to be making a difference, so I'm going to try switching those 2 around and see if it still holds or if it goes dead. But it is on and running. So it's a good sign so far. Okay, we are up and running. So power is going into the boost gauge, then there's a daisy chain going to the water temperature and a daisy chain going to the oil pressure. These 2 are connected to the cables into the engine bay, but of course are not connected to any sensors yet, which is why they're not showing anything just yet. But the boost gauge is absolutely showing. But I've got to figure out how to flip it from HG, whatever that is, to PSI, because that's what we're all used to. So switch over to PSI here a second. So the next job is just to tuck all of these wires back in here. So you can see, here's gauges. Probably look a lot better at night. It's a little tough to see in the daytime. The light ring around the outside, you can faintly see it, but I think it'll look a whole lot better in the dark. But I do need to get out this little screwdriver over here. It's behind me. Can't quite reach it. There is a switch on the back of the boost gauge to change this setting, I think, over to PSI, so I'm going to work on that. All right, so on the back of this gauge, there's a small hole where you can put a screwdriver, and there's a plus or minus. So what you're supposed to do is, as this turns on, when you turn the engine on and power up the gauge, it should default to 0. But as you can see, it's defaulting to 5. So what we're going to do is take the gauge out. I have to set the camera down. Just hang tight there. I'm going to twist this little tiny screwdriver you have to get in there. All right. There we go. And somehow that flipped it to PSI. Not sure how that works, but it does. So now I've twisted that so the engine is turned off. It's sitting at PSI. And let's just double check the wiring here just for reference once again. So see my crimps here. So the green and white on the GT goes to the black on the gauge. The orange on the gauge goes to the black and yellow on the GT. Then the black and white stripe on the GT goes to a combined red and white on the gauge. And I tried every other configuration that I could think of and nearly burnt my car down. I didn't. So with that changed, we now have power. We now have the correct measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up and see what it checks for as a baseline of the boost. Okay, just like that, we are back online. So again, these gauges aren't connected to anything, so of course you're not going to measure anything. So the only one that's actually functional right now is the boost gauge. So I'm going to gas it up, should see more boost. So after a quick Google search, figured out what the NHG stands for. So that's inches of mercury, and that refers to vacuum pressure. So it's actually giving a negative reading. So if it's a 0, that means there's a negative pressure. And then once it goes above 0, that would be your pounds of boost, which is why the PSI is over to the right. So right now, there's no boost. In fact, there's negative boost. The vacuum line and the engine, which I'll go check out. Connection here. You can see we're coming off the vacuum line, off the back of the plenum, right here, and into our little filter. That filter comes over here to our boost gauge. That gauge has that wire, and this wire winds around down over here and goes back through the firewall and into our gauge that's inside of the dash. So because it's just idling, it has a negative pressure, but once it's under load and the turbos are spooled up, then what we should see is that it will go from a negative 13 to a positive boost. So let's see if we can spin the turbos at all. Doesn't feel like the turbos are going anywhere. We might have a problem. So another problem for another day, but boost, the gauges are in. They look good. It's time to start stacking up this center console again.